Laura both worked at Canal Alliance, who we have also been, they're one of our oldest community partners. Go for it.
Good afternoon. My name is Mireya Rivera, and I am in Julia's class, Self-Community and Service. Laura and I both worked at Canal Alliance as tutors in the ESL Student Education Equity Program. We both helped them with homeworks and reading and writing in English and special projects with justice and equality in the community. They pick different topics every week, and they work on different projects such as racism, sexism, and education equality, especially when it comes to higher education. So to talk a little bit about what I learned about myself during my service learning at community at Canal Alliance, I'm going to read some excerpts from reading responses that we did in class. This is in response to a text called Why Can't We Be Good, written by Needleman, and this is in response to his idea of humans having to mentally and physically allow ourselves and the functions of the body, heart, and mind to willingly obey the impulse of love that originates in the self. This is page 224. So what can drive us to this awareness? Personally, I believe that only through life situations, when faced with the part of being a role model, do we learn about ourselves. Characters are brought to light and limitations exposed. We are forced to listen to others and their needs, and our ability to love is put to the test. Can we, as modern humans, truly love? And if we don't ever reach this point, can we be happy? If we believe that we are not constructed to be happy in selfishness, can selfless action lead us to our salvation, the ability to love? To study our need for self-realization and to connect abstract texts with real-life selfless action is our test. And in this course, particularly, the test is being our service to others. Completing our service is something we truly cherish in the road to success. Success in terms of happiness, inner happiness, not a good grade. Allowing our personal desires, thoughts, and fears to be put aside when sharing with others is becoming he or she who can do what love demands. In my case, putting the students first allows me to become the student. I am then able to become the person seeking guidance, but not help. Describing my service as help only evokes a feeling of superiority, which distracts me from being able to connect with the student and to grow. Being able to share with the student allows me to see who I am and who he or she is. It allows me to see my ability to love, but not to love quite yet. My inner self is more apparent to me as I see myself more and more in each student. So what I learned about myself, I learned that to love others, I have to love myself, and to love others, I have to see myself in others. I have to connect with others. And being myself, that I had been in that situation before, being the student who didn't fully understand the language, who was new to the country, I am able to put myself in their shoes and able to connect with them on a more personal level, so that sense of superiority isn't there, and we can connect, and there can be trust, and we can learn from each other. And what did I learn about others? In response to what I learned about the students, I just learned that they are kids, just like I was at once. They just want the opportunity to be what they want to be, and to know that they can do whatever they want to do. They're full of life, full of hope. They see their parents struggling every day, and they only see all the possibilities that are ahead of them. And I just want to be, a stepping stone for them to be able to reach those goals. What I learned about the people who work at Canal Alliance, I wrote a little excerpt as well in response to the text Whistleblowers, written by Alfred, was that these people too are special in their own way. I wasn't there only learning about the students who were there, but also about the people who work in the community. As I wrote, curiously enough, those who end up working for the community in search of justice, despite the outcome of financial instability, are those who were in an unjust position previously. For example, the leaders at Canal Alliance are people who the community can relate to. They are those who came from immigrant families, who they themselves did not know a word of English when they came to this country. Those are the people helping those same people today. Perhaps they did not get into politics, but they definitely got into positions where they do work with the people and for the people. These are the new whistleblowers. They are rebelling against their own experiences. Alford would argue that they are not whistleblowers because they did not receive any backlash from their companies. But in my eyes, they are the true whistleblowers, those who do what they feel they have to do for others regardless of the outcome. Those who choose to help others through situations they themselves have been in. If that is not whistleblowing, then I don't know what is. Now I'm going to hand it over to Laura.
Hello, my name is Lauro, and I also worked at Canal Alliance. And I'll have to admit that when I started this project, I wasn't very excited. I didn't think much of I didn't know much of service learning, and I didn't think it would do much to me. I thought it was just a requirement that I would have to go through, but I actually went through sort of a transformation as I went through the project, and I remember one particular day when this happened. It was the day was just like any other day. I got there. There was chaotic conversations, shuffling of chairs, hands, bodies, paper. The kids were just all in an uproar. And I went to my usual table and I sat with my usual group of kids. Anna, she sat across from me, shuffling through her iPod and playing with her hair. Chiquilin cracked open a book and he was pretending to be reading. And I noticed that he was just doodling, drawing circles and triangles and old English letters on the margins. And at that moment, I felt useless. I thought to myself, if I can't persuade just two kids to do something, to do their homework, to listen to me, how could I ever touch them in a meaningful way? I thought service learning was exotic, useless. And at that moment, this kid, who they call araña, which means spider in Spanish, because he has really long legs, so they call him that. He comes up to me, and I'm wearing a shirt with the portrait of Che Guevara, and he points at it, and he says, Che, he was un vato chingón, a real badass. He's like, maybe if they hadn't killed him, things wouldn't be so bad. And I just smiled at him and I nodded. And before the day was over, I walked up to him and I gave him the shirt, and he just kind of smiled. And at that moment, I was kind of scared, because I just gave him the shirt, like really not hoping for anything, just because he liked it and he wanted it. And I was kind of scared because I realized that whether I wanted or not, I was becoming a role model for these kids, particularly like my group of kids. And to be addressed in such a manner is morally demanding. But when you address like that, you have to take the advantage for dialogue. Like you have to take that opportunity. You can't let it go. And but I realized something else. When I gave him the shirt, I realized that service learning is about compassion and love, but not as an extrapolation based on your own vulnerability and pain as it measures up to the lives of others. No, service learning is much more complex, much more primal. It is something that grows in the gut and takes flight from the windows of the heart. Service learning is about listening to your inner voice and maintaining a dialogue with the self, and in doing so, being awakened to the you that lives in someone else, in another person. And it is this inner conversation that makes an issue real, and the dialogue that follows is what pushes us to commit ourselves to action. Now that I have the opportunity to look back at my previous attitudes and actions, it becomes clear that I was not running away from the label of role model or from my responsibilities, but from that inner voice that was pushing me to commit myself to these kids. If one doesn't listen to the self and to that inner voice, one isn't just numb to the grievances of others. Those people don't even exist anymore. I had the option of just doing what I had to do and not really listening to the kids. But I knew that if I did that, I would be condemning them to the violence of anonymity. They wouldn't exist. When you do service, you're presented with two options. One for intellectual growth, for example, of the ethics of the class that I was taking, and the other for the promotion of the common good. Up till that day, I only thought of myself, of doing my service and learning the class materials. Jacob Needleman wrote, "However I may cultivate my inner life, if I do not love my neighbor and act justly toward him, I myself cease to be human." That day I realized that throughout history, human beings have hyper-cultivated the inner life, all the intellectual stuff, technology, but for the most part, we have only used this to exploit each other, to wage war, to create gaping inequalities. I think part of the reason is because we're only harnessing the inner life, and we're not listening to that inner dialogue within ourselves. When I went to Canal Alliance, that's one of the first things that I noticed, that I was becoming something else for the kids. I was more than a volunteer, but rather someone who could listen to their stories. And I realized that a moral demand had been made of me, and that I could no longer ignore the inner voice within me. But in listening to that voice, I was also becoming an individual. Alfred wrote of individuality as the ability to have a conversation with the self. It is the whistleblower's ability to talk to himself about what he's doing that explains, if anything can, why he blows the whistle. To think and act on the basis of inner dialogue may not be the whole of individuality, but it is an important part. So when I was done with the project, I definitely learned something about myself and about what a component of real justice is, which is listening to your conscience, to that inner voice that we constantly silence. And I still don't know whether service learning or having everybody vote or revolutions will change the world and really bring justice, but I think what service learning does is that it pushes you to see yourself in the struggles for justice that other people are constantly fighting. And I think that's one of the fundamental things about any movement that seeks justice, is for you to be able to not only empathize with someone else who's seeking justice, but to know that their struggle for justice depends on yourself.
Any questions for these two? Sorry, it's like